Our next speaker is Justin Bovington. He's the CEO of River Runs Red. Justin?
Good morning. First of all, what I'm going to do first of all is that I actually had a presentation last night, but I realized that we had some new data come in overnight, which is very, very interesting. We've just done a survey of 50 top executives in the UK about trends that are happening, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, is that we're very much driven from American technology reports, particularly around Gartner and Forrester, which seems to have an influence. And what's interesting is how a lot of the big advertising and media companies are having to go to local knowledge to be effective. And it's funny how we are still very much hung up on kind of global data. So hopefully some of this information is very, 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 very quick for you. What I'm going to do is really give you very, very quick 20-minute sound bites. And if you want to ask more information about where it's, obviously how we're developing these models, please come back. Or if you want the presentation itself, let me know itself. One of the biggest challenges that we've all got is virtual worlds are becoming the 3D web, which means that we're going to see a lot of traditional HTML and Flash-based e-learning systems being able to be aggregated from within virtual worlds. Now, why is this is important is a lot of the e-learning systems that have been out there that have been running for 10 years are still very relevant. And of course, they made a very, very substantial investment actually in that technology, and they don't want to actually throw it away. They want to actually use that as a legacy system. And also costs are coming down, and I'll go through, which may surprise you. Now, I'm obviously an advocate for Azure Linden Lab and Second Life. We've been involved with Second Life for 7 years. In fact, we were the first company in the world to do commercial projects in Second Life, including about 80% of the consumer work that was done between 2006 and 2008. But in 2008, we changed direction. And we actually went towards e-learning, meeting collaboration, and in the corporate space and in the enterprise space. And we've been developing and working with Linden Lab a product called the Immersive Workspaces solution, which so we've already got a 2-year leap, if you like, in terms of what we've been doing with beta and alpha, and I can share with you some of those results, and particularly kind of real-world examples, because a lot of people will talk about actually what's happening out there in terms of what it's going to be, but the reality is it's here now. And hopefully, and I'm going to show you some videos that had never been seen before, and some technology that's never been seen before as well today. So first of all, there's 3 strong trends that are coming out. The first one, of course, is whether we take the blue pill or the red pill on May the 7th or 9th, whatever it's going to be, on the election. The one thing that's unifying both parties is this need that they've understood the need for faster broadband connection. Now, if we've had arguably 6 years of ubiquitous broadband, if we're going to have faster connection and we're going to have faster broadband, it's definitely going to change the way that we interact. It's going to go beyond just being able to download 6 albums at one time. It's going to obviously change the way we can also work and actually interact in terms of a cultural level as well as social level and actually work level. Now, if you talk to the Tories and you see what's happening in the Tory party, it's interesting, the stats, and I can give some stats afterwards if you're interested, actually, which I got sent through this morning about how important they say that they're saying that and the tax incentives that they're going to give to home workers. Now, why is that important? We had a chat with the guys at AA. It's funny enough, since I wrote this, because I just come back from New York, but actually, if you notice, it says that by the 1st of April, petrol will be at £1.20. It's obviously gone beyond that. I think I was past the petrol station on the way in today, and it's 120.9. Commuting is not becoming a necessity, it's becoming a luxury. And the trends that we're looking at from people we've been working at with BP and Shell is we could see the break with duty of price per litre up to 150 and 180 within the next 3 to 4 years. If anything, it's being done to tax us to actually get us off the road. So this is, again, we think probably one of the most important things that are happening out there. And the other thing as well is, although I just said I came back from New York, I used to do about 300,000 air miles every year, minimum. In the last 2 months, I'm sure it's the same with you, so the last 12 months, I've actually done hardly any air travel at all. And the 35 major corporates that we deal with have told us in no uncertain terms that it will not be a return to the golden age of business travel. We're also working with virtual worlds to actually break the to try to break the habit of executives to perceive their gold business travel cards as a sign of virility and masculinity, femininity, whatever it's going to be. You know what it's like. The problem we have out there is every graduate who comes into a company, they don't feel they're a fully fledged consultant until they have their 2 gold cards on their briefcases. We're trying to break that trend inside of it. Interesting enough, by the way, I'm not very popular, as you can imagine, with people like British Airways. When I spoke about this at the International Travel Managers show, what we're trying to say to people is that people don't travel, give them karma miles. Because actually, at the end of the day, it's all about the executives wanting to take their families on business class travel to the Bahamas with all the air miles they've accrued. At the end of the day, what's happening, we're finding, is that a lot of companies are now saying they won't endorse that. They're not going to endorse it. And actually, 2 companies we deal with, every project, they have to now give a carbon report from taxis, paper usage, even right down to the actual ink cartridges that have been used, and proof that they've actually been recycled as well. So they're the 3 high-level strands that we're finding. So what's happening on the actual technology side? What's the kind of shift? Again, I'm going to talk specifically about Second Life because obviously it's actually very close to what we've been involved with for 18 months. And I know that it always splits the room between people who love it and hate it. I've never had a kind of, when I don't get heckled at some stage from this kind of stuff. But it's interesting that it does do that. And we can't deny its influence. I mean, there's 10,000 colleges and universities, 1,500 companies in there, and they're still doing stuff. What's interesting is you're not seeing as much activity on the Second Life platform because most of it is now B2B. So therefore, there's no real reason for it to be talked about in the press. It's not like it was before with the PR exercise in there. One of the most important thing, of course, is you can now buy your own virtual world as an appliance and stick it behind your firewall or host it wherever you want to do. What people don't know, it's actually pretty cheap to do. It's about $100,000, and that gives you a fully running system inside of it as well. And then a couple of weeks ago, although it's only just filtering through as a beta product, this has massive ramifications. There's now a seamless integration of HTML, including Flash, inside the virtual world itself, which means, as I said, if you've got an existing HTML or e-learning system there, you can now very, very seamlessly integrate that in. And what was interesting, as I said from the speaker before, is we know it increases retention levels. We've had about an 80% increase in retention level from actually traditional stuff that people were, the attrition rate on that e-learning system was about 40% to 60% of people dropping out. Those numbers have just dropped dramatically from actually when you put it inside a virtual space and give it a sense of destination inside of it. So what I'm going to show you very quickly is how that all comes together. And I've never shown this video before. We've had to generic it down a little bit. I'm sure anyone who actually deals with corporates will know why. So I've taken out a lot of the names, but you'll see what we're doing. But this is actually showing you how it's incorporated. At the end of the presentation, by the way, I've got something new to show you as well. So let me just go on that.
Here is Adam's usual computer, and this is his usual email application. But this is not a usual email. This is Adam's email invitation for his training in the virtual world. He recently received his Avatar Starter Kit, so he is prepared and ready to log into the immersive workspaces. Here is Adam's avatar, and these are some of his colleagues. They work at many different locations throughout the world. And here is the trainer, right on time. A huge variety of training across a large number of industry sectors can be simulated using the Immersive Workspaces solution. Today, Adam and his colleagues will be learning about customer relations in a retail store environment. First, they watch a presentation on best practice. Then they rehearse what they've learned in a role-play situation. Versatile character creation for use in role-playing can be a real benefit of the virtual world. Adam's knowledge is then put to the test with a short exam. And finally, a one-to-one assessment with his trainer, who is pleased to tell him that he has passed this training module. Adam has gone on to develop a wide range of skills through his access to training modules in the virtual world. He values the opportunity he has had to work with global colleagues and feels fully immersed because of the unique benefits of the virtual world environment.
So what's the thing that actually from that as well is the fact that after the actual course is finished, they actually get sent a certificate that they can print off. And the thing is that it's all pretty integrated. Everything is pretty seamlessly done through from the web presence through to the accountability and seamless integration of that. Whereas before with virtual worlds, it was very much a fragmented experience. And one of the things that we always picked up on is people used to say to us that they love to do meetings and collaboration events in particularly Second Life, but a 15-minute meeting used to take 45 minutes to set up. Now with web integration systems, it's now pretty much seamless and pretty much instant. So that's a big change in terms of what's happening there as well. So the thing is, obviously, what I'm going to quickly go into is some more stats that we've been picking up in terms of the changing landscape. Now, this is what we've picked up from HR change management teams from within large corporations, from your non-traditional IT-based stuff and kind of e-learning stuff that's there. But I think it's pretty good to see what's happening. One of the main reasons being is because if you work with a marketing team, these are the guys with the budgets. So, of course, these guys are very, very keen to make sure the fact that this stuff is going through. So what's changing, as you can see from there as well, people aren't defined by their office space anymore. Two of the companies we're dealing with now have a scheme that's based on Mondays and Fridays work from home days. And this obviously has bigger problems in terms of making sure those people have adequate seating in terms of health and safety as well. So this thing about reducing the amount of time coming in. One of our clients is a big call center, and they're reducing their square footage by 50% by having a rotation system, and they're looking at virtual worlds as a way to engage with their workforce side of that. Also, this thing about knowledge transfer. In the last year particularly, there's been a large amount of people made redundant from the industries that we all work in. One of the things they've got, of course, is this thing about making sure that ideas and culture of ideas are actually exchanged across multiple areas. Now, obviously, this means if you work globally, there's a great way of actually doing that, and that's actually a very, very key trend, not just in virtual worlds, but of course in kind of seminars and kind of meetings of minds as well. And also they're seeing their internal workforce as where the ideas of innovations are coming from. They're relying less and less on so-called industry experts, and they're actually realizing that their biggest experts themselves are actually their employees, which is a big change. I know it sounds surprising, but obviously, particularly in the last 5 years, we've seen that happening as well. And I can't stress this enough. I mean, this is what they're saying. So people are taking this very, very seriously. But I've got to say, and I'm not going to say this in terms of what's happening, but what's happening is when we talk to people about you can save your CO2 report, that is a very, very good thing for them to do. But how it's sold in is, of course, is we're saving them a large amount of money. And money is still the big motivator to get people to buy into this. If we're reducing travel and the need for hotels and what have you. And again, we've got case studies from an Intel conference that we ran about a year ago, which was traditionally 350,000. It was achieved the same results for 35,000. So you can see what's happening in terms of the demand. Then one of the most important things to say as well, and it's never really articulated properly, is that we don't think it will ever fully replace face-to-face, but if it reduces the need to have multiple face-to-face meetings, then it's obviously a very, very good benefit out in the market as well. So this is the stuff that we're finding. This is the big thing, the big trend, this thing called the kitchen table workforce. We're obviously picking up on this thing in the moment called the two-job norm, where a lot of people are obviously are having a virtual job as well as a real job as well. There's also been a large amount of middle-class unemployment in the last year. In fact, we were yesterday with a government body talking exactly on this whole point, this hidden unemployment, the hidden disenfranchised, particularly around the ages of 42 to 54. What it's going to mean in terms of this in the next couple of years for those people, we don't know yet, but we think it's going to be things like virtual worlds and actually retraining is going to be a very, very critical thing for these people going forward. Side of it. So actually, where are we going with it? We're also working with, this is a new product we're developing, we're actually doing home office systems as well, where we're actually working with a company called Archipod, where we're actually creating small footprint offices for gardens. Traditionally, this has been very expensive. If you wanted to do it before, it was more kind of grand designs than it was kind of B&Q. These systems are about £5,000, so they're pretty cheap. There also as well is that we're also working with corporates as well, where we're actually creating larger versions with this and taking away car parking spaces to create additional meeting rooms. So people will go to this. The good thing also is that we've also connected these locally. So what you can do if you're a freelancer is when you go inside with your RFID tag, it logs you into your virtual space, but also logs you in virtually to other pods in your area, so you can start collaborating across actually what you're doing. Now what I'm going to do is that this is the last video. I'm actually going to turn the sound down actually, so I can talk you through it. This is some work we're doing in the FMCG market in terms of planogram systems. And one thing we're finding as well is that probably one of the things that we're obviously very concerned about is people talk about virtual worlds, particularly for meetings. But we're finding that's only 20% of our main usage. What we're finding is that virtual worlds themselves are their own application. They are their own platform to develop applications actually upon them. And this is a great example. You'll see in a second in terms of what's happening. All those textures and graphics are all pulled in from the web. They're all actually SKU codes of actual products. So what happens is that we actually create that in real time. It's actually pulling all those textures and data directly from a HTML-based database system, which changes the way, obviously, virtual worlds have traditionally been created. It's been a very, very manual process. You have to employ a company to come in. They spend an enormous amount of time building your models, and of course, they're instantly out of date. What's happening here is we're going in weekly and photographing these archetypal stores up, so you can actually see exactly what products are actually on display. Why is this important? This is the birth of the 3D web. It means we can have one model that works across multiple clients, and obviously it means the fact that the sustainability of the actual business model that we're creating is obviously very, very actually important as well. It also means as well is that we're taking collaboration to a new level, because we're not just relying on people coming into an empty office with a virtual chair and a virtual desk. We think this is a missed opportunity. Collaboration happens when the content is correct. It happens actually when you can actually, all of you, immerse yourself in content. We like to call this your content as a destination. So naturally, ideas flow. Again, the great slides, this thing about doing from before is exactly that's there as well. But that's very, very quick. And again, I just wanted to give you a very quick 20 minutes. I'm sure I'm timed just a little bit under on purpose. But I was just going to give you those three main points that we're obviously working on and we're finding is resonating at corporate level, which is this thing about less about trying to sell meetings and about virtual replacements for offices. It's got to be more about collaboration and engagement, which means about taking their content and creating that as a space in itself. The danger will be, if not, we'll end up in another hype cycle where we had empty shop fronts before, we'll end up with empty offices because actually people have got to go there for a reason, and that's the reason we're doing it inside of it. And again, the platforms are becoming pretty powerful. The problem is before we were selling Second Life, although I mentioned Second Life at the beginning, you'll notice what we were doing was taking their functionality and creating apps on top of it. We weren't just using the in-world tool set for people to create it. The sandbox is great, but of course it needs a reason to be there to be sustainable in the market. And again, this thing about living landscape, think about beyond the virtual world, how we can integrate this actually in terms of contentless destination. And as you saw, the kind of thing we're working on is that we're taking this into immersive spaces, what it means physically, how we can transcend this. Because we talk a lot about what it means at cognitive level and what have you, but what we're not really doing is talking about how we can engage people within their physical space as well. Thank you very much.
I have one question. If I'm a Tesco Direct customer, let's say hypothetically speaking, could I go into the virtual world now?
No, you can't. It's all closed off. But what we are going to be doing is, and we're seeing a demand for it, is more closed off focus groups. One of the problems that happened in the last 2 or 3 years is this sense of accountability where, you could have an avatar, but you didn't know who was the person operating it. And this thing now where we're obviously, people are becoming more accountable. We're definitely seeing a trend, for instance, where we're going to see Facebook interfaces with real identity coming straight in actually to those virtual worlds. And we think that's one of the downfalls, because unless you know who you're dealing with, it doesn't really make actually sense from there. But what is interesting in terms of the stuff you saw, another major retailer we're dealing with is creating a space for their 900 store managers to come in to collaborate, because then it's a safe environment. They can, and again, this is about this ideas-driven culture, knowledge transfer, and the ROI on it is enormous, as you can imagine, because there's no traveling, they're engaging, you know, and it's, you know, I think it's pretty exciting stuff. But we're finding there's a shift. There's the consumer proposition, which we think is getting confused across the whole board. There's the education proposition, which is about having a go at it. We discussed this in the break about OpenSim, being a great advocate for that. And then corporate use, and corporate use is very different. The difference is with this stuff, it's still low cost, and this is a challenge we think actually in the market's going out.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions before Justin joins the panel? Great, well thank you very much. If you could take the end seat there, Justin.